is now pleased to recognize for 5 minutes Dr. Wenstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for everyone for participating today. You know, one of the things I heard today is the importance of women and minorities in the workplace, and I couldn't agree more. And I hope that we don't do things that are going to prevent us from getting back to where we were pre-COVID, which led to record low unemployment levels for women and minorities. But, you know, as we're having this conversation, I want to thank the hard work of working families and those that employ them, and especially those employers that really desire to assist their employees in time of need. And so this is a great conversation as we look at ability to access childcare. And also, I think we need to be talking about incentives for Americans to become childcare providers. We can talk about having childcare capabilities, but you've got to have the providers. So, you know, as a dad, I understand the importance of taking time off from work, being with your family. As a doctor, I understand the impact that family leave and childcare can have on health outcomes for children. And I also come at this issue as a prior small business owner. I was operations chair for a large orthopedic group that was my practice. We had 300 some employees when I first started in practice. I had 2 employees, and if one of my staff was out, I'd have my mom come in. And so small businesses face unique challenges, and we need to ensure that we address this and not necessarily do it from a top-down, one-size-fits-all approach, because there's a lot of differences. And as I said at our last hearing, and I'll say it again, the topic of childcare can and should be bipartisan. Let's craft policies that look to provide paid leave and childcare flexibilities to more families. And let's do it in a bipartisan fashion, because we want these policies to be robust, lasting, and effective. And together, I think we can provide significant support to childcare providers, as we did some of that last year as Congress responded to the pandemic. And those were bipartisan, targeted efforts. But much of the previously allocated childcare funding hasn't even made its way out the door. And the goal should be to make it easier for folks to balance work and family life. And we don't want the government programs to be burdensome. So ultimately, the benefits we offer families need to give them more freedom and more choice. And we need to set families up for their own success. We've heard today one size fits all doesn't really work for this paid family leave and childcare. It's not always the best answer. We need to empower Americans with more flexibility and choice, and need to give the employers more flexibility and choice. Well, I'm working on legislation that would give employers more flexibility to tailor childcare benefits to meet their employees' needs. The employer-provided childcare tax credit is an existing permanent tax credit aimed at helping employers provide childcare for their employees. The problem is that currently this can only be used by employers who offer an on-site childcare services. And the IRS has said only about $50 million in total is claimed by employers, largely because employers don't typically invest in building on-site childcare facilities. Some employers don't have the capacity to build childcare facilities on site, or there are liability and usage concerns. My bill would allow employees to use this credit if they contract an outside childcare provider to offer these services to their employees. This provision is included in the Republican paid family leave and childcare discussion draft that we released today. So I do have a question for Ms. Melito. Do you think offering this tax credit for employees to be able to use outside childcare providers would give businesses the flexibility needed to meet this often unmet childcare need?
Thank you for the question. And yes, I think making the credit more flexible and expanding its usage would be very important. I mean, as I said at the outset in my opening statement, I mean, NFIB's average member has, 5 to 10 employees. It would make absolutely no sense for them to set up, a child care center on site. I mean, it's just crazy to think about doing that there. So even with a cost partially offset by a tax credit, it's just not going to happen there. So, expanding the use of the tax credit could be very helpful too, and making it very manageable and easy to navigate too. Any credit, claiming the credit is also very important because again, they're doing payroll in-house. They don't have extra time to spend on record keeping and compliance costs.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that would have been very difficult for me when I had 2 employees, and we did have pregnancies, and like I said, my mom would come in, but for me to set up a child care center and do all that paperwork on top of running a practice would be pretty difficult. So thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Wenstrup. The chair is now pleased to recognize for 5 minutes.